The human fleet hung silently in orbit above the Empire's palace, its ships small and fragile compared to the towering alien citadel below. The palace was a wonder of engineering and alien beauty, spires of silver and gold stretching into the clouds, shields shimmering with an eerie light that made the entire city appear alive. To the humans were fragile, weak, and unpredictable, a species barely worthy of attention. Yet one human had already started to rewrite what they thought they knew. Commander was not like other humans. He was not the strongest nor the most heavily armed, but he carried something they had never measured: courage, patience, and a heart that refused to bend to fear. Today he carried a mission that seemed simple on paper: deliver a message of peace to the Queen. In reality, it was the kind of mission that could end in death, or worse, humiliation, if the wrong move was made. Inside the palace, light pulsed in colors had no names for. The Queen waited in her throne room, her presence commanding every inch of the vast hall. She was magnificent and terrifying, her tall frame covered in scales that glimmered with the colors of the galaxy. Her eyes, like twin suns, could pierce into a person's soul and expose every secret. But she was not alone. Hiding behind her, peeking nervously from between the columns of her throne, was a small figure, Princess Lyra, her daughter. The young girl had always been curious and daring, often sneaking to places she shouldn't, testing boundaries her mother fiercely protected. Her scales were paler than the Queen, and her eyes wide with fear. She had been watching from afar for days, studying the humans' strange ways until today, when her curiosity had gotten the better of her, and she found herself needing someone she could trust. Stepped into the grand hall, each footfall echoing against the crystalline floors. Every gaze followed him, the guards, the courtiers, the Queen herself. A quiet tension pressed against him like water, threatening to crush him. He sensed a subtle movement behind him, a shadow brushing against the alien architecture. When he glanced back, his heart stuttered. There was Lyra, small and trembling, hiding behind the humans' only hope. Without hesitation, he moved slightly to shield her, placing himself between her and the court. The room fell into an eerie silence. "Your Grace," said, bowing low, though his eyes never left the girl, "I come in peace, and I believe someone here needs protection." Lyra's small hand edged forward toward him, almost instinctively. The courtiers gasped in disbelief. No human had ever dared such a thing, not even near royalty. To touch, let alone protect, a princess was unthinkable. The Queen's eyes narrowed, her scales flickering with anger and shock. "You dare bring a human this close to my daughter?" she demanded, her voice sharp and cold, like ice cracking under pressure. Lifted his chin, his voice calm but firm. "I do not wish harm, Your Grace. She is frightened and she has trusted me." For a heartbeat, the court froze. Humans were expected to be weak, predictable, and obedient. And yet here was one standing tall before the most powerful being in the galaxy, offering protection without a weapon, without a show of force, simply with courage. Lyra stepped forward slightly, her small frame trembling but her gaze strong. I just wanted to see," she whispered. Her voice was tiny, yet it carried a weight of innocence, defiance, and hope. The Queen's blazing eyes softened for a brief moment, though only enough for to notice. Her pride clashed with her maternal instinct, and her suspicion battled against the truth staring her in the face. This human had not cowered. He had not obeyed out of fear. He had chosen to stand with her child. Looked at Lyra and then at the Queen, his voice steady. "Sometimes the bravest hearts are the smallest," he said gently, "and sometimes they trust the right person even when the world doubts them." The Queen's scales flickered again, faster this time, a silent war of emotions raging across her body. Her daughter had hidden behind a human, and yet, the human's courage, his simple yet undeniable bravery, forced her to see something new, something beyond fear and control. A moment of quiet hung in the hall, thick with anticipation. Realized that protecting Lyra was no longer just about diplomacy. It had become about survival, not just hers, but his as well. And for the first time in centuries, the Queen did not command. She watched, unblinking, as the human shielded her daughter, a sight that would change the palace forever. In that silent standoff became the impossible. A human strong enough to defy an empire, brave enough to protect a princess, and courageous enough to stand where no human had stood before. The throne room felt colder than before. Even the sunlight streaming through the crystal windows seemed hesitant, afraid to touch the polished floors where humans and now stood together. Commander kept himself between Lyra and the court, his stance steady, yet his mind raced. Every eye in the room was on them, guards, ministers, even the Queen's closest advisors. Whispers buzzed like a swarm of insects. No one had ever imagined that a human could protect a princess so openly. Lyra pressed herself closer too, trembling slightly but refusing to hide completely. Her eyes, wide and luminous, reflected a mix of fear, curiosity, and trust. She had never felt this kind of safety before, not in the palace, not even in the protective embrace of her mother. Had become her shield, her unexpected guardian, and somehow she sensed he understood more than any ever could. The Queen's gaze burned into, her colors shifting rapidly, a sign of her inner turmoil. Pride, suspicion, anger, and maternal concern all fought for dominance. "You are reckless," she finally said, her voice calm but sharp. "You do not understand the weight of the walls you stand within. One wrong move and you could destroy more than your own life." Didn't flinch. "Your Grace, I understand more than anyone might think," he said softly. "And I understand that she needs someone to trust right now. That's more important than rules or protocol." The courtiers whispered louder. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but audaciously so. And had done something no human, or had dared. He had put himself in the line of danger not to fight, but to protect. That simple truth resonated in the air, a quiet thunder that unsettled even the most confident of the Queen's advisors. Lyra took a small, tentative step forward. I wanted to see the stars," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I wanted to know if humans were really brave." His lips curved slightly in a gentle smile. "Bravery isn't about strength, Lyra. It's about choice. Choosing to do what's right even when you're afraid. That's something you already understand." The Queen's scales flickered wildly. Her daughter, hiding behind a human, was speaking truth that even she could not ignore. Had not just protected Lyra physically, he had allowed her to speak, to be herself, and to show a courage that often overlooked in their children. One of the Queen's advisors, a tall, thin with silver veins running along his arms, stepped forward. "Your Grace," he hissed, "allowing a human this level of proximity is dangerous. What if he is a spy? What if he is leading our princess into chaos?" His gaze sharpened, but he remained calm. "I am no spy," he said firmly. "I am a human. I act on what I see, and what I see is a child who needs protection and trust. That is all." The Queen's voice rose, echoing across the hall. "And what of loyalty?" she demanded. "What of tradition? What of the Empire?" Met her glare with steady eyes. "Loyalty isn't given because of fear. It's earned through respect and courage. If you can see that, perhaps your daughter will learn it too." A silence followed, heavy and almost unbearable. No one had ever spoken like this to the Queen. No human, no, had dared to question her authority with such calm and certainty. And yet, there was no malice in his words, only honesty and a quiet strength that made the palace walls themselves seem less intimidating. Lyra moved closer, pressing her small hand into his side. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. I feel safe with you." The Queen's eyes softened, though only slightly, a flicker of vulnerability crossing her majestic face. She could not deny the truth. Her daughter was safe, and the human standing before her had changed something in the palace. A simple act of courage that spoke louder than any weapon, louder than any decree, louder than centuries of pride. Knew the moment was fragile. One misstep, one wrong word, could turn the fragile trust into disaster. But he also knew that this was bigger than fear or politics. This was about hope. The hope that humans, small and fragile as they seemed, could teach even the greatest empire that courage and heart mattered more than strength alone. And as the sunlight caught Lyra's pale scales, making them shimmer faintly, realized that today, in the heart of the palace, a new story had begun. A story where humans were no longer the weak outsiders, but the ones who could change worlds with nothing more than courage, kindness, and the willingness to stand for what was right. The palace corridors were quiet, almost eerily so. Walked beside Lyra, keeping himself between her and the ever-watchful eyes of the guards. Each step echoed against the polished floors, a reminder that they were far from safety, even within the Queen's walls. Yet felt no fear, only determination. He had learned that courage often outweighed numbers, that a human's heart could be stronger than any alien army. Lyra's small hand gripped his arm tightly. "Why are they so afraid of me?" she asked softly, her voice trembling but curious. "I'm their princess, shouldn't they protect me?" Glanced at her, feeling a mixture of pity and admiration. "Sometimes," he said gently, "those in power are more afraid of what you can do than of what you feel. Fear makes people act strangely, even your mother." Lyra's eyes widened. "But she loves me." Nodded. "I know she does, but love isn't always enough to make people brave. That's why you need someone who will stand for you no matter what. That's why I'm here." They rounded a corner and stopped in a shadowed hallway. The air felt heavier, filled with whispers and unspoken warnings. Had been inside the palace long enough to understand one thing. The queen's authority was absolute, but that didn't mean her decisions were always wise. Some in the court had their own ambitions, and Lyra, curious and defiant, had already drawn attention she couldn't yet understand. Lyra whispered, "Why did you come here? Humans, they could just stay away, right? Why risk yourself for me?" His gaze softened. "Because sometimes doing what is right isn't safe, and sometimes it's the smallest act that changes everything." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You hiding behind me, that's courage too. You're not just a princess, you're a fighter in your own way." Lyra's lips trembled, but a small smile appeared. "I never thought anyone would understand that." Their moment was interrupted by a sudden noise, a soft click, the sound of a lock disengaging somewhere nearby. Stiffened instantly, signaling Lyra to stay behind him. From the shadows, a figure emerged, a tall with scales of deep violet, a stern face, and eyes that glimmered like steel. "You should not be here," the figure said coldly, his voice slicing through the quiet like a blade. "The princess does not belong outside her chamber, and you, human, are a trespasser." Did not step back, he placed himself fully in front of Lyra. "She belongs wherever she chooses, and I will not allow anyone to threaten her." The sneered, "You dare defy the Empire. You dare defy the Queen." His voice was calm but firm. "I dare protect the innocent, that's all I dare." For a tense moment, the hallway was silent. The violet-scaled figure studied, assessing strength, willpower, and perhaps understanding. Finally, he stepped aside, his expression unreadable. "Then walk carefully, human. The palace watches every step." As the figure melted back into the shadows, Lyra let out a shaky breath. "Why is everyone so scared of me?" she whispered, more to herself than to. Crouched slightly to meet her gaze. "Because you are important, powerful, and sometimes the most dangerous thing in an empire is a child who knows what she wants." They continued down the hall, each step heavier than the last. Knew this was only the beginning. The Queen's court would test him, challenge him, perhaps even threaten the princess outright. Yet he did not waver. Humans had a strange way of turning fear into courage, of standing when others would fall, and he intended to show that today. Finally, they reached a quiet chamber, one of the few places in the palace untouched by watchers. Lyra sank into a chair, her small body shaking, knelt beside her. "You're safe now," he said softly, though both knew safety in the palace was never permanent. "But you must be ready. The court will not let this happen quietly. They will test you, test me, and try to break our trust, and we cannot let them succeed." Lyra looked up at him, her large eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she whispered. Placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to be afraid. Not while I am here. Humans, we fight with heart, and your heart is stronger than you know." In that quiet chamber, far from the grandeur of the throne room, a fragile alliance was forged. Not of politics, not of power, but of trust. A human and an alien princess, standing together in a palace that underestimated both of them. And somewhere deep within the palace, unseen eyes watched, taking note of the courage that dared to defy tradition, fear, and expectation. Knew the real battle was just beginning. The palace would test them, yes, but it would also show them that even the smallest acts of bravery could shake the foundations of an empire. And he was ready. The next morning, the palace was alive with whispers and tension. News of the human protecting the princess had spread quickly through the halls. Courtiers, guards, and advisors all gathered, some curious, some fearful, some openly hostile. Knew the queen would allow this only for a moment before testing him. And now, the moment had arrived. The queen entered the throne room, her presence like a storm sweeping across the grand hall. Her eyes, bright and unyielding, fell upon and Lyra. Every in the room waited silently, watching for her command. The court's air was thick with judgment, suspicion, and the faint hint of anger. No human had ever stood so openly before them, and no had ever dared defy protocol so boldly. "You have caused unrest," the queen said, her voice firm. "And yet you claim to protect my daughter. Why should I not see this as betrayal?" Stepped forward, keeping himself between Lyra and the rest of the court. "Your Grace, I seek no power here. I seek only to protect what is innocent and to honor what is right. That is my choice, and it is my way." A ripple ran through the court. No human had spoken with such certainty. Some advisors whispered angrily, questioning his audacity. Others seemed hesitant, curious about this strange species that could confront an empire's might with nothing but words and courage. Lyra's small hand reached for us, a silent reassurance that he was not alone. Her eyes sparkled with determination, reflecting a courage she had never shown before. "I want him to stay," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly but carrying a weight that shocked the courtiers. "He protects me better than anyone else here can." The queen's scales shifted, flickering with colors of anger, pride, and contemplation. She had always prided herself on control and authority, yet this human, this frail creature from another world, had forced her daughter to trust someone other than her. And Lyra's courage had forced the queen to reconsider everything she knew about strength. One of the senior advisors, a tall with veins of gold running along his arms, stepped forward. "Your Grace," he said, voice heavy with accusation, "allowing a human to interfere with the princess's life is dangerous. We do not know his intentions. He could be a spy or worse, a threat to the empire itself." Met his gaze without flinching. "I am no threat," he said calmly. "If anything, I am the last line of defense for your daughter. You may doubt me, but my courage is not born of ambition or fear. It is born of choice and the choice to do what is right." The court murmured again, but some of the whispers were different this time, curious, almost admiring. Even the most loyal advisors could not deny the human steadfastness. Humans were fragile, yes, but their hearts could be unbreakable. The queen leaned forward slightly, her voice softer but no less commanding. "If what you say is true, you will prove it. Not with weapons, not with threats, but with action. Show us your strength, not your body, but your heart. Protect the princess where the palace itself will fail her." Nodded, "I will, your Grace." His eyes moved to Lyra, who nodded back, trusting him completely. She was no longer hiding. She was standing with him, ready to face whatever the palace could throw at them. The queen's advisors exchanged uneasy glances. To protect a princess was an honor, a duty, and a display of loyalty. And here was a human doing it without fear, without demand, without any thought of gain. That was something they had not accounted for. Turned toward Lyra. "Stay close to me," he whispered. "The palace will test us, but remember this, bravery isn't about size or power or even knowing the outcome. It's about standing when it matters most." Lyra's eyes brightened and she straightened her posture. "I'll stand with you," she said, voice small but firm. "I won't hide anymore." The queen watched silently, her colors shifting with every word, every gesture. For the first time, the palace saw something unexpected, a human standing without fear and a princess choosing trust over protocol. That simple act, unnoticed by most, had the power to change the entire empire's perception. The whispers grew louder, but now they were mixed with awe. Had proven one truth: humans could inspire courage, not just in themselves, but in others. And Lyra had proven that even the smallest, youngest heart could lead where the strongest dared not step. In that moment, the palace walls did not feel so unyielding. The tests, the suspicion, the fear, all of it could be challenged because sometimes strength came not from power or decree, but from heart. And the human and Lyra, the princess, were ready to show it. The palace corridors, once silent, now carried whispers of plotting and malice. Moved cautiously with Lyra at his side, aware that not all welcomed their alliance. Some saw him as a threat, a human daring to defy centuries of tradition. Others, curious or secretly admiring, watched from shadows, unsure how to act. Every step was tense, every glance a potential challenge. Lyra's small hand gripped his arm tightly, her trust absolute. "Are they going to hurt us?" she whispered, her voice quivering. Crouched slightly to meet her gaze, giving her a calm, steady smile. "We will not let them. They can try, but courage can shield us better than any weapon. Stay close to me and nothing will break us." They entered a chamber where the walls glimmered with alien runes, light flickering as if alive. Sensed movement, subtle but deliberate. From the shadows, two figures stepped forward, palace guards, loyal but misled by whispers of doubt. Their weapons hummed with energy, aimed not at its heart, but at testing his resolve. "You should not be here," one guard hissed, his eyes narrowing. "The princess belongs behind walls, not beside a human. Step aside or face consequences." Did not flinch, he stepped in front of Lyra fully, his posture calm but unyielding. "I will not step aside. She is not yours to command. She is free to choose who protects her, and I have chosen that duty." The guard's energy weapon flared, a warning shot close enough to singe the floor. Didn't move. Lyra's eyes widened, fear mingling with awe. The guard hesitated, the human's unwavering courage shaking his confidence. "You humans," the guard muttered, voice trembling, "you are too fearless." "Not fearless," said calmly. "Careful, brave, that's different, and that's what keeps people safe." For a tense heartbeat, the guards assessed him, uncertainty flickering across their features. Humans were fragile, yes, but's heart, his courage, his refusal to yield, these were things they had not counted on. Finally, the guards stepped back, lowering their weapons. Lyra exhaled shakily, leaning closer too. "I didn't know humans could be like that," she whispered. "So brave, even when they're scared." His hand brushed her hair softly. "We are scared, always, that's why bravery matters. Choosing to stand anyway, that is what makes the difference." Just then the room's light shifted. From a high balcony, the queen watched silently, her colors shifting with emotion. Pride, concern, and perhaps a hint of wonder crossed her scales. Her daughter, hidden no longer, was safe because of a human. That simple truth unsettled the court, shook their assumptions, and reminded the empire that strength was not always measured in power or technology. Moved to the center of the chamber, taking a deep breath. "The palace will test us further," he said. "They will try to trap us, to separate us, but we will stand together. Humans fight not for glory, not for fear, but for what is right." Lyra straightened, her small fists clenching. "Then we'll stand together," she said, voice trembling but firm. "I won't hide, not anymore, I trust you." The queen's eyes softened at that, though only slightly. She had raised a daughter meant to follow rules, meant to obey protocol. Yet here was Lyra, defying expectation, learning courage from a human. That alone would leave a mark on her people, on the court, and perhaps on the empire itself. The whispers of the courtiers grew louder, a mixture of disapproval and fascination. No one had ever seen a human act with such certainty, nor a princess choose trust over fear. The palace, long a symbol of order and control, now faced a new truth. Courage, heart, and simple bravery could shake even the mightiest halls. Looked at Lyra, his eyes steady. "The palace may try to frighten us, but our courage is stronger than their fear. We fight together and nothing can break that bond." Lyra smiled faintly, her fear replaced by determination. "I believe that now," she said, "because of you." His lips curved into a small, proud smile. In that moment, amidst the palace's grandeur and whispers of doubt, one undeniable truth shone through. Humans, fragile and underestimated as they were, could inspire courage, change hearts, and stand firm where even centuries of tradition might fail. The chamber seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the palace awaited, full of tests and trials. But in Lyra were ready. Together they would show that bravery was not defined by power but by heart. The palace was quiet, yet tension lingered like a storm ready to break. And Lyra moved cautiously through the halls, aware that eyes followed them from every shadow. Whispers of doubt and disapproval rippled through the courtiers, but some were silent, watching with awe as a human protected the princess with nothing but courage and conviction. Lyra's small hand found, again, her grip steady. "Do you think the queen will ever trust us?" she asked softly, her voice carrying both hope and fear. Glanced at her, his expression calm but determined. "Trust isn't given, Lyra, it's earned, and we've already begun earning it, one act of courage at a time." They reached the throne room where the queen awaited. Her presence was imposing, scales shimmering in the light like a living jewel. She did not speak at first, merely observing them, her eyes analyzing every movement, every expression. Felt the weight of 1,000 judgments pressing on him, yet he stood firm, unwavering. "You have caused unrest," the queen finally said, her voice deep and commanding. "And yet your actions show something unexpected." Her scales flickered with a mix of anger and admiration. "You protect my daughter. You do not bend to fear. You do not seek power. Why?" Stepped forward, speaking with quiet conviction. "Because it is right. Protecting her is not about power or glory. It's about doing what must be done, even if it is dangerous, even if it is difficult. Humans are small and fragile, yes, but we fight with heart, and courage is stronger than anything else." The queen's gaze softened slightly, and for a moment saw a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, a mother's concern for her child. "Your words, your courage, it is unlike anything I have seen," she said. "And yet the court will not accept it easily. They will see your actions as rebellion, your presence as a threat." Lyra stepped forward, her small figure resolute. "Mother," she said, voice trembling but firm, "I trust him. I don't want to be afraid anymore. He keeps me safe. I need him to stay." The queen's scales flickered wildly, her emotions warring within her. Pride, fear, love, and doubt battled openly across her body. She had always raised Lyra to obey, to follow the rules, to respect tradition. Yet here was her daughter showing courage and choice, guided by a human. And somehow she understood that presence was more than protection. It was a lesson, a spark of hope, a bridge between worlds. "You would risk everything for her?" the queen asked, her voice both challenge and wonder. Nodded, "Not just for her, for what is right, for what can change hearts, for what can inspire courage even in a palace that fears it." A silence filled the hall, thick and heavy. The courtiers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure how to respond. Some felt admiration, some unease, but none could deny the truth. A human had dared to stand where no had, and in doing so, had changed the dynamic of the entire palace. The queen moved closer, her eyes fixed on. "I see now," she said slowly, her voice softer than it had ever been. "Humans, you are fragile yet unbreakable. You lack power, yet you wield courage that can change the world. My daughters trust your actions. It is undeniable. You have taught even me a lesson." Lyra's eyes shone with tears she refused to shed. "See, mother, he is brave. He keeps his word. He doesn't lie. Humans, they can be better than anyone expects." The queen took a deep breath, her scales shifting to the softest hues she could manage. "Then let it be known," she said finally, "that is not merely a guest. He is a protector, a teacher, and an ally of this palace. Let those who doubt him see that courage, not power, defines strength." A murmur ran through the courtiers. Some were reluctant, others amazed. But all understood that a shift had occurred. The rules of the palace, the expectations of the empire had been challenged, and a human had changed them. Glanced at Lyra, her small hand still in his. "We've done it," she whispered, relief and pride shining in her eyes. Smiled faintly. "No, Lyra, this is only the beginning. Courage inspires more courage. What we've done here will ripple through the palace and maybe even beyond it. Humans may be underestimated, but that will always be our strength. We never back down." The queen stepped back, observing them, her colors settling into something warmer, calmer. For the first time in centuries, she acknowledged the possibility that the smallest heart, guided by bravery, could change the fate of the strongest empire. And in that moment, the human and Lyra, the princess, stood together, two hearts bound by trust, courage, and the unshakable belief that even the smallest, most fragile beings could make history. The palace was alive with tension, the whispers of doubt replaced by uneasy curiosity. And Lyra walked through the grand hall, their steps steady, their resolve unshaken. Word had spread quickly. Humans could be more than fragile creatures. Humans could be brave. Humans could change the impossible. The queen stood at her throne, her scales shimmering in shades of calm and strength. The court had gathered, their eyes on, waiting for something, proof that the human was either a hero or a fool. Stopped in front of the queen, placing himself protectively before Lyra. "Your Grace," he said, voice steady, "we have faced fear, challenge, and doubt, but courage, honesty, and trust have carried us through. That is the power humans bring, not weapons, not technology, but the strength of heart." Lyra stepped forward beside him, small but unwavering. "I chose him," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Not because he is perfect, not because he is the strongest, but because he is brave, because he keeps his word, and because he trusts me. That is all that matters." A murmur rippled through the court. Never before had a princess openly protocol to declare trust in a human. The advisors exchanged uncertain glances while the guards shifted uneasily. Courage had inspired something impossible: respect, admiration, and even fear of change. The queen studied them silently, her gaze like a prism reflecting centuries of expectation. She had raised Lyra to obey, to respect the palace rules, to honor tradition. And yet, here was her daughter, trusting a human, standing boldly, showing courage beyond her years. And here was unarmed, ordinary in appearance, yet extraordinary in heart. "Humans," the queen said finally, her voice steady, rich with authority and wonder, "you have shown us a truth we cannot ignore. That courage is not measured in scales, weapons, or size. That bravery is a force that can inspire and protect. And that trust can change even the oldest hearts." The court fell silent. The weight of her words settled across the room. Some bowed their heads in reluctant respect. Others glanced at with newfound curiosity. All realized that a single human had stood boldly against centuries of expectation and had not bowed to fear but to principle. Lyra's eyes glimmered with tears she refused to shed. "See, mother," she said softly, "humans are strong, stronger than anyone thought, not in power but in heart." Smiled faintly, letting the weight of the moment settle. "The smallest acts of courage," he said, voice low but carrying across the room, "can change worlds. And we, humans, and everyone can rise together when we choose trust and courage over fear." The queen stepped forward, her scales shifting to a gentle, warm glow. "Then let it be known," she said, voice echoing through the hall, "that shall remain in the palace as protector of my daughter, and let all who doubt the strength of the human heart learn that courage is not measured by might but by choice." The courtiers gasped. Some bowed in respect, others in disbelief. For the first time, the palace walls felt less unyielding, less intimidating. They had witnessed the impossible, a human, ordinary in form, extraordinary in spirit, shaping the future of an empire simply by standing with courage and heart. Lyra ran to and hugged him tightly. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything, for protecting me, for believing in me, for showing me how to be brave." His eyes softened as he returned the hug, careful and gentle. "You taught me too, Lyra. You reminded me that bravery is contagious, and hope can change even the hardest hearts." The queen watched quietly, her pride mingled with wonder. She realized that her daughter, guided by a human's courage, had learned a lesson that no palace, no rule, and no tradition could teach alone. Trust, bravery, and heart had reshaped their world in a single, powerful moment. Outside the palace, the stars glittered like promises. A human had stood where no one expected, a princess had chosen courage over fear, and a palace had witnessed the undeniable truth: humans could be heroes. Not because they were strong, not because they had weapons, but because they dared to stand for what was right. And in that moment, the empire, and perhaps the universe, would never forget the day a human heart changed everything.